Each man must do his bit.
Hi, hello, and welcome to another edition of Public Interest. We're so happy that you can join us. I'm Gabriela Patram. With me is no stranger, and that is former President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and lead of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. David Granger. Sir, welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you.
It's always a pleasure to be back. Thank you.
Sir, today I want us to discuss CARICOM. CARICOM's future, as we have labeled it, and Guyana's foreign policy. CARICOM has 15 member states, and in 2023, which is next year, they're going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary. My first question to you is, has CARICOM achieved its original ambitions?
The simplest answer is no. When CARICOM was established 48 years ago in 1973, of course it was the successor organization to CARIFTA,
Yeah.
and CARIFTA came into being literally on the wreckage of the West Indies Federation. When Forbes Burnham became Prime Minister or Premier in December 1964, within the space of just 7 months, he visited Errol Barrow in Barbados, and together with Vera Bird, the three of them, I call them the three busy bees, established or set created a structure for CARIFTA, and later on Trinidad came on board, and by 1973 CARICOM was established. But in my view, it was largely aspirational, and it never had the assets, it never had the organization, it never had the operational capability to carry the burden of a full community. It was successful to the extent that, or it has been successful, it has achieved the objectives of functional cooperation in terms of CDEMA, the Emergency Management Agency, in terms of the Public Health Agency, CARPA, in terms of the CSEC that we keep hearing about. So there is a level of functional cooperation which CARICOM has, I say, done well. It has achieved its objectives. But in terms of the economy, no. It has not been able to move the economies of the region forward. There is a great deal of cultural, I suppose, if you want to call it cohesion, CARIFESTA and that type of thing. But this is not enough. These things are necessary, and they're mostly, people feel good about them, but in the final analysis, people have to eat food, transportation, and that type of thing has to be provided, and we have not done well in that regard. So, in brief, I would say CARICOM has not achieved its economic objectives, but in the level, or at the level of functional cooperation, CARICOM has done well. And I call it a public good. It's better that we have CARICOM than we not have it. But whether we have done enough is a question that I would answer in the negative. We have not done enough to raise the quality of life of the bulk of the citizens of the Caribbean community.
Sir, you touched just now on the economic side, and that was going to be my next question as to what challenges confront CARICOM and as an economic community. We would have established at the start that it comprises of 15 states, and it's scattered over 458,000 kilometers of sea space.
Well, that is the problem. It's a geographical problem,
Okay.
to start with. You're talking about 15 states, or even if you include the associated states, you're talking about 20 states, scattered over an area of 458,000 square kilometers of sea space. The distance between Nassau and Georgetown is over 3,000 kilometers. The Caribbean community does not have the assets to conduct the affairs of an organization over such a vast space. That is the, even when there's a disaster like a hurricane, Guyana cannot deliver relief to an island that has been battered by a hurricane or an earthquake. You have to depend on the bigger countries, maybe like United States of America. So the challenges of space, particularly, have never been overcome. We have never acquired the shipping lines. We've never acquired, even Caribbean Airlines, that LIAT, these have not been entirely reliable, although the best we have, and we can continue to support them. But I would say that unless we pay attention to the economy, the Caribbean community will not succeed. And when we speak about single market economy, we have not really achieved much in that regard. We must acquire the assets. We must acquire, shipping. We must acquire other forms of transportation to really integrate the economies of these 15 or 20 states. And geography is geography. You can't change the location of those countries. So it's not going to happen unless we develop some different model. And I think the model needs to be re-examined at this point in time. So these are the challenges that we face. We just don't have the assets. We just don't have the wealth. We don't have the organizational capability. We can't compare ourselves with ECOWAS in West Africa or the European Union. Those are contiguous territories. But as I said, you're talking about 458,000 square kilometers of sea space. We have not got the resources to cover that distance, and we have to think of a new model.
Sir, under your tenure as president, the coalition, the AP and UAFC coalition, would have signed agreements, with Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. What was the coalition's policy towards economic cooperation?
The policy was to, bring that single market into existence, quite simply. In less than a month after Dr. Rowley was elected Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I went over to Trinidad to visit him, and he later on came to Guyana, and we signed an agreement. Even before he was elected, literally in the last day of July 2015, I went to Trinidad and Tobago and met Prime Minister Kamala Prasad, and we had discussions on the economy. So as far as my engagement with the two prime ministers, Kamala and Keith Rowley of Trinidad, it's purely economic. And similarly, my engagement with Prime Minister Mia Mottley, again, it was economic. Now, we were constrained at that time by the CARICOM treaty, and we tried to operate within the boundaries of that treaty. And our discussions were positive, but tentative nevertheless, in the sense that we ourselves did not have the resources to move the economies forward. There was a lot of goodwill on the part of Prime Ministers Keith Rowley and Mia Mottley, but my engagement was largely to move the economic thrust much more quickly than it had been moving before, even though it was in a smaller community, a sub-regional community. That was our intention, that the economy came first. And no matter how many carifestas we have, no matter how much CSEC we have, we still have to pay attention to integrating the economies. And we have not been able to move forward, and I think over the last 18 months or so, since the new administration has taken over, there has been a lot more talk, but the process has not moved forward along the lines that would actually make the three economies more integrated and that could bring greater prosperity to our people. Of course, it's been a bad period in terms of the impact of the pandemic on the economies, but there are greater prospects now for petroleum in Guyana and for manufacturing in Trinidad and for services in Barbados. And my intention then, when I was in office, was to build a stronger bond between Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana in terms of economic development. That was my intention at the time.
So we're still on Trinidad. This current administration, the PPP administration, closed the Guyana's High Commission in Trinidad and Tobago. What will be the effect of that, sir?
Well, that is one more PPP foreign policy failure. It's very unintelligent to close. It's the first time we've had a resident high commissioner in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm very proud of that fact that we actually had and it was a fulfillment of my economic diplomacy policy to bind these three economies, Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana, close together. And no matter how much you do, you cannot conduct this sort of commercial and business and other economic cooperation, from Tacuba Lodge. And I think it's a big mistake. You can't go out one day talking about integrating our economies, and the next day you shut down the High Commission, which was the main economic presence of Guyana in Trinidad and Tobago. And our High Commission there, High Commissioner Ramsarup, actually was meeting with Chamber of Commerce, meeting with businessmen, trying to facilitate Guyanese trade. And before the PPP understood what was going on, they just shut it down. And now it's much more difficult. You cannot have an ambassador located in South Road, Georgetown, doing the type of engagement with the business community of Trinidad and Tobago. So it was a terrible mistake, and we've never had a resident high commissioner there before. In Prime Minister Burnham's time, we had a resident high commissioner in Jamaica, which was not really a good place to be. The better place to be would be in Bridgetown or Port of Spain. And I deeply regret the move. And sometimes you don't know what the PPP is doing in terms of economic diplomacy, but that is a big mistake. And I really hope that they find a way to reestablish it. But they just commit these blunders without asking questions, without doing any research, without thinking about the consequences. It's like shutting down the public service staff college. It will do, these things do a lot of damage. It's not going to be evident right now, but in years to come, you'll see that it'll be more difficult to do business with Trinidad if you do not have a resident high commissioner there. That is the purpose of the high commissions. It's not just a cocktail party. It's a business. That's what it's there for. And we've missed an opportunity that we've dropped the ball, or at least the PPP has dropped the ball.
And sir, presently we have about 15 Barbadian and Trinidadian corporations that are operating in Guyana. How do these corporations contribute to economic cooperation?
The three countries, Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana, have advantages or comparative advantages in, or have assets in different fields. In Guyana, the biggest asset is land, L-A-N-D. There's no doubt about that. We are big. If you put all of the Anglophone Caribbean countries together, they would not come up to half of the size of Guyana. Our land is our biggest asset. And of course now, as you know, we are moving towards petroleum. But although 2 years ago I announced we are we don't what they call National Petroleum Day. We are now a petroleum exporting country. We have not really integrated petroleum into the economy. Trinidad is, among the three of us, the major manufacturing country. It has got a well-established petroleum industry and natural gas industry, and Trinidadian manufacturers are dominant in our small community. And Barbados has got many services. Even when I was in opposition, prior to 2015, I was engaging in Barbados services, and of course they have made a lot of headway on renewable energy. So I would say that these three countries bring different advantages. Now, one of the biggest banks in Guyana is Trinidad-owned bank, and some of the big supermarkets are Trinidadian-owned. You have things like Ansa McCall, Neil and Massey. These corporations provide services. Barbados as well has got a good record in services. We must try to get away from this concept that each country must try to do everything on its own. We cannot afford autarky in this way. There must be a sort of appreciation of the comparative advantage of each country. We will not be able to replace or remove Trinidadian manufacture for years to come. Trinidad is well established, but let Trinidad do the manufacturing, let Barbados provide greater services, including tourism services, and let Guyana produce land for food production. Now, in terms of tourism, Guyana has an excellent tourist product, but we do not have experience in managing a tourist industry. And it would be great if a visitor from Europe, for example, could come to the Caribbean and get a mixed package of tourism. So rather than just going to the beaches in Barbados and going back home, you can come to see the tropical rainforest in Guyana. You can go into the mountains and go up the rivers and, maybe go fishing and get other forms of nature tourism, environmental tourism. So Barbados can help us in that regard by helping us to develop our tourist industry and by creating a truly multifaceted Caribbean tourist package. And Trinidad can continue to contribute in the areas in which it has that advantage. And Guyana could develop with Trinidadian capital, with investment, with infrastructure, with information technology. And together, the three of us could produce more than we are producing individually. So it is a way of maximizing our economic potential by coming together. And I look to see that there will be opportunities for greater integration among these three Eastern Caribbean countries.
And sir, those things that you listed just now, in terms of the individual countries coming together, those things that we, along with others, they can do to those three countries, Guyana, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago, can also work on those and more to enhance economic cooperation as well. Mm-hmm. Do you share the same sentiments, sir? Or can they do more? Can we do more?
Well, there are issues. As I said, one of the issues in Guyana, Guyana is developing its agriculture potential is, of course, investment. And it does not have the capability right now to mobilize the capital for that sort of investment. A big problem in Guyana is infrastructure. Almost every week you can see pictures of road-bound vehicles going into the hinterland, maybe getting stuck in the mud during the rainy season. We need to develop infrastructure. It's difficult to access certain hinterland areas without aviation. Um, you need to look at information technology. You know, only under my administration we were able to create 4 hinterland towns, so that the delivery of public services in Mabaruma, Bartica, Mahdia, and Lethem could be quickened. But much more needs to be done. But we are limited because of in Guyana, because of our lack of investment capital, because of our still underdeveloped information technology, and because of our poor infrastructure. So these are big limitations, and I feel that the combination or the closer cooperation among the 3 countries could help us to overcome those obstacles, those challenges.
Sir, developing countries and even developed countries, I think that they are always looking to reduce their food import bill. CARICOM has an annual food import bill of over $5 billion US dollars. As it relates to Guyana, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago, how can these 3 countries reduce their food import bill?
By investing more in Guyana. Quite frankly, a great part of that food import bill is to feed animals, food, stock feed. But there is a level of, the Latin word for island, or the English word for island is insula. And there's a level of insularity which goes without saying. Unfortunately, in the past, many Guyanese have been expelled from Barbados, particularly under Prime Minister Thompson around 2009. It's left a bitter taste in the mouths of many Guyanese. And another Prime Minister really praised the efforts of Guyanese workmen in Barbados, but it has left a very bitter taste among Guyanese. But as far as the question you asked is concerned, we could, starting in Guyana itself, we could produce more food. And Guyanese too have to overcome this preference or this obsession with certain types of imported foods. You know, and we mustn't feel that it is a good thing to have maybe an apple or a pear. When apples, for example, are picked once a year. So whenever you eat an apple, it's a year, you know, several months old, you know, but you can get fresh mangoes, which are more nutritious, or you can get fresh fruit juices, which are more nutritious. But I think maybe some people in Guyana and the Caribbean feel that unless it comes from a foreign country, packed with chemicals and you know, on the shelf for several months, that's the best thing, which isn't true. And we have to do more to overcome the cultural obstacles to consuming local products. And Guyana could do much more if we overcame those obstacles. I know, for example, having gone up to Pomeroon, I would say Pomeroon is the best coconut water in the entire world. I mean, you know, I can tell the difference, you know, between Pomeroon coconut water and coconut water from Thailand or Brazil or anything else. It's different, it's best. But you would find it difficult to market Guyanese products in certain parts of the Caribbean. I know one Caribbean country actually produces or imports Guyanese coconut water, but they brand it as a product of their own country. I don't want to call the name of the country, but they do not put the word Guyana on the label of the bottle, and that's a prejudice that we have to overcome. But the bitter taste of, you know, the way Guyanese have been treated, you know, in years, you know, up to quite recently, up to 2000 during Mr. Jaggio's presidency. We still have to overcome those prejudices, and we still have to make the Guyanese product attractive to people in the Eastern Caribbean. I am convinced that Guyana has the capability to produce every commodity that the hotel industries, the tourism industry, the hospitality industries in Barbados and Trinidad, and even Grenada need. And we need to do more in that regard. I cannot imagine any foodstuff that the Eastern Caribbean needs to import from outside of the region. And we need to develop the capability to manufacture in the process. And we're making headway. Guyana is making headway. That is why it was so necessary for us to have High Commission in Port of Spain, so that you can sell products. During my presidency, the emphasis was on economic diplomacy. So I myself went to London and spoke about the economic prospects, in Guyana. And our high commissions and embassies were engaged in promoting Guyanese products. And that is the purpose of our diplomacy, economic diplomacy. It's not cocktail parties. It's hard work selling Guyanese products, but Guyanese manufacturers need to do more. We mustn't be satisfied with just buying and selling stuff from overseas. We must become manufacturers, we must become food processors, we must become exporters.
Sir, as we wrap up, my final question to you on this discussion is: the original CARICOM model has produced mixed results. Is the CARICOM model appropriate to the regional reality?
The CARICOM model needs to be changed. It is no longer appropriate. That is the simplest answer. It is often said that, an industry is too big to fail. Well, I would say CARICOM is too big to succeed. It sounds paradoxical, but the fact is that we cannot try to have an economic community stretching from Nassau or Belize to Georgetown over the whole Caribbean Sea. Right now, it's not possible. We need to remodel CARICOM. I would propose an Eastern Caribbean economic community among Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana. I propose that we try to develop our relative or comparative advantages in food production, in manufacturing, and services. I'd recommend that we don't have to throw the original CARICOM model out of the window, but we must understand that it functions best at the level of functional cooperation, exams, public health, disaster relief, and that sort of thing. But it has not functioned well in integrating our economies. And in the final analysis, the people of the Caribbean, or the people of Barbados, Guyana, and Trinidad, will not be able to enjoy that good life unless we bring economic benefits to them. And I propose that a new economic model, this economic community for the Eastern Caribbean, is the best way of delivering the good life to the Caribbean people.
All right. Well, sir, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program and chat with you every week. And to you, our viewers, we say thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of all of us here at Public Interest, we do encourage you to continue to follow all COVID-19 guidelines and protocols. I'm Gabriela Patram. Goodbye.